a few things about our awesome speaker, Amy Rasmussen. So she is a Utah resident. She's worked at a nonprofit, or she's worked at 2 different nonprofits for the past 10 years. She helps provide college funding. She helps educate women, younger girls, older girls on leadership and providing them with different professional skills. And then she also is a wife and a mother of 3 boys and 1 adopted daughter, and that has encouraged her to be an advocate for adoption, which is really awesome. She likes to help give practical life tools, time management, leadership, online lifestyles. She's an advocate for bullying prevention. She's an experienced makeup artist, and she is a self-proclaimed glue gun expert. So Amy is super crafty. She's really awesome. She's often referred to as Amy Poppins because she's everything under the sun, essentially. And she just does really great for those in her community, and I'm so excited for her to be able to come and present to us and share some of the leadership skills that she teaches on a day-to-day basis. So everybody give a big round of applause, and we're going to hear Amy speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maddie. I think we have moments in our lives where we feel like we've arrived at a certain place. This is one of those moments for me, guys. I feel like I've arrived a little bit. This is super fun. So thank you so much, Belinda, for coordinating this event. And I'm super excited to be here, truly. As Maddie mentioned, I wear a lot of different hats. I'm a director of 2 nonprofit organizations. One is, it's actually a scholarship pageant. So one of your audience members, Kenzie Hutchings, is one of my former state contestants. She's amazing. And we just provide scholarship money for young women. And I've seen it. I've witnessed it change the lives of young women, so that's what keeps me going. And we're going to talk about motivations in just a minute. And the other one is called the Ivy Girl Academy. It's fairly new, but we teach elite leadership skills to young girls, which I love. It's absolutely a passion of mine, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I've been a motivational speaker for the last 3 years. I do a lot of youth groups. I do a lot of elementary schools, so I'm expecting some good behavior today because we're all in college. I don't have to clap my hands and do the whole little thing to get you to quiet down. If I do, that will be really fun. And you can all join in and laugh about it later. So as you can see up here on our little projector, this is the title of today's mastermind. I'm important, and man, I'm exhausted. How many of you, without raising your hand, can identify with a feeling in that title? You're important, and you're a leader, and gosh dang it, it's tiring sometimes. And there's days where you don't know how you're going to manage. You don't know how you're going to do it all. You don't know how you're going to be a student and a person in leadership and a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a coworker. And we take it on, guys, and we do it. And sometimes it's freaking hard, right? Okay, this is going to be on YouTube, and I just said freaking. Sorry, Mom. Okay, so let's just jump right into why positional leadership can be so tiring and rewarding. We have to add that too. It can be really, really rewarding. So just in the last week or two, I've been scrolling through my social media, and I started to make a list of all of these people and these characters on my social media feed that fit this category. So I've made a list through my observations. The first one is I'm a student, and I took on way too many credits. Anyone identify with that one? Yeah, some heads, hands, okay. I'm a hardworking employee, and I feel trapped in my job. Yeah, my husband owns a company, and he sometimes cannot stand some of his employees, but he does it anyway, and he feels sometimes a little bit trapped in those things. But he loves them, don't get me wrong. I'm dating and feeling discouraged by the prospects. Anyone else? Okay. I'm a single parent, and I feel lonely and overwhelmed. I hold leadership callings at church, and it can be spiritually, emotionally, and physically too much sometimes. And you can take out church and put in school. Sometimes those leaderships, they require a lot of us. And why this one in particular is meaningful for a lot of us in Utah, positional leadership in church is spiritual, it's physical, it's emotional, and it can be really hard sometimes to take on other people's trials when we're trying to navigate our own, okay? I'm an athlete, and the pressure to perform is physically and mentally difficult. I consider shopping a sport, so, sometimes it's really hard to find those sales, okay? I promise. I'm a good friend, but I'm surrounded by people that bring me down. I think this one resonates a lot with your age group in particular. You're still kind of balancing those relationships and how they have meaning in your life. You're trying to be a good roommate. You're trying to be a good friend. But sometimes those feelings aren't always reciprocated. And last, I'm just doing my best and I'm worried it's not enough. Raise your hand if you feel that feeling. Yes, absolutely. So do any of these sound like you? I'm sure they do. And people in positional leadership, which all of you are, it's very characteristic for you to take on more than one of these things, right? So we take on that role of a student. We take on that role as a friend, as a girlfriend, as a boyfriend, as an employee. We take on these leadership roles and we take on the stress and the demanding schedules, and then we sit there and we wonder why we're tired, or why we're unhappy, or why we just don't want to do it anymore. Okay, and we're going to navigate today some feelings and things that I've learned through my leadership, how we can manage that stress, how we can manage sometimes that exhaustion and the feeling like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Okay, because it's normal. I want to put that out there. Those feelings are normal, and we're going to talk about them in a little bit more depth. So right now, here's the interaction segment of today's presentation. I would love some... I just want to make a list, a comprehensive list, and you guys can just shout out your answers. What does life require from you? Okay, you're in this room, you're coming to UVU, but what does your basic life outside of leadership look like? What responsibilities do you have? What did you say?
Mom.
Being a mom? Okay. And we know that could have a whole list, right? What else?
Honesty.
Being honest? Okay. What else? I'm going to add laundry. Got to have clean clothes, right?
Definitely.
What was that?
Studying.
Studying. Okay. What's that?
Groceries.
Yeah, food. Okay, groceries. What else? Basic things that we have to do.
Rent.
What did you say?
Rent.
Rest.
Bills.
Ooh, yeah. Bills. Sleep. Or lack thereof. Okay. What else? Gentlemen, I want to hear from you.
Food.
What are things you're dealing with?
Food.
Food? Okay.
Dogs. Missing our dogs.
Dogs?
Dogs. Missing them.
Aww. I'm gonna put a little sad face.
Family.
That's hard. Family? Okay. How many of you live away from your parents? How many of you like living away from your parents? How many of you really miss mom and dad? Okay, it's okay. We can admit that here. Safe place. What else? How many of us have church responsibilities? It's spiritual care. Okay. You have your hand up right there in the hoodie. What are you gonna say? Were you agreeing with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Does this look like a pretty good list?
Business, jobs.
Jobs. Okay. How many of you are managers or have people below you that you're required to manage? Okay, so we can put management. All right. With all of these things, just basic school, your professors, your homework, showing up, just being here, that's a responsibility. I know you guys are all working towards your Cal requirements, your lead requirements. So this is tip of the iceberg, wouldn't you agree? To all the stuff that we actually deal with day to day. You could put in there my self-esteem, my weight, or I don't like this about myself, or I don't like that about, my roommate. All of those things can play into our emotional health and our emotional well-being. So does this list, is this manageable long term? This little itty bitty list? What are we laughing at?
It's so hard.
It is hard, right? And like I said, this is tip of the iceberg. So when we add really all of the things that we do every single day, it's really not manageable sometimes for one person long term. We can take bits and pieces of it at different seasons in our lives, but we shouldn't be required to do everything for everybody. Yet sometimes we put that pressure on ourselves. We put that expectations on ourselves. Let me grab my little beeper. So we take it on, guys. We take it on, we bring it on, and why do we do it? Why is the big underlying question to this whole thing? Why do we do this? I love what I do, but I'm not sure why I'm doing it. Have you ever asked yourself that question? I love my kids, but why did I choose to have them? Sometimes it's a real question. I love my spouse. Sometimes drives me crazy, okay? So we have to ask ourselves at the end of the day sometimes, why am I doing this? If I love it, what's fulfilling? What's getting me to the next point in that progression? So if you've asked yourself this question, chances are your responses have changed at certain seasons or times in your life. I know they have for me. When I was 23 and trying really hard to prove myself, I became the youngest state director, this might make sense to some of you, in the Miss America organization, which is a hierarchy of different levels. And I was the youngest state director in the whole country at 23. Did that bring on some pressure? Oh yeah. Did I feel like I had to prove myself? Oh yeah. Plus I was a mom of 2 young kids. I was a wife trying to be supportive. And there were days that I'm like, what the heck am I doing this for? Like, I'm not getting a medal at the end of this. I'm not getting, a trophy. But it was why I came back to it, because I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So yes, this is different, and the seasons change. So just think about what your motivation is today. As we sit and we talk about some of the things we get ourselves wrapped up in, go back to that motivation. And if you want to write it down in 1 word, 2 words right now, go ahead and do that, and then we'll revisit that motivation in just a minute. How many of you have ever felt that you've been lost in that motivation? Like maybe you've lost a sense of self as you become a leader. Okay, it's something that I think all leaders go through, where you have to identify what your motivation is and who you are and what's making you move forward in some of those endeavors. So let's talk about some motivations. These are just a few that I felt would be meaningful to each of you here today. Expectations and personality. How many of you have seen The Office, the movie? It's a classic. Yeah, if you could just stop overachieving and making us all look bad, that'd be great. Okay? Sometimes it's just in our nature. It's just in our character to be like a baddie. Like we want to just get in there, we want to do it, we want to prove ourselves, and we want to show everyone that we're super qualified and we're awesome. Okay, and that's not a bad motivation. It's not. A lot of these things that fall into expectations and personality are based on our history. So when I was in 5th grade, this talks about history, right? Like how many ever years ago that was. I was in 5th grade, and I remember my teacher, Mrs. Atwood, she said, okay, guys, we're going to take a classroom poll. Who wants to come up with the Christmas craft for parents? So this was a craft that the whole class would do, and then we would, put your name on the back, and that's what you'd wrap up in a brown paper bag and give to your parents for Christmas. Do you guys remember doing this? Like an ornament? Okay. So she asked the class for a volunteer, and nobody raised their hand. And that makes me super uncomfortable, so I'm glad you guys are all participating. But I was like, okay, someone say something. And nobody did. So I raised my hand, 5th grade, bad phase, braces, permed, didn't have a great sense of who I was. And I'm like, what if we did this one craft that I saw, don't remember where I saw it, where it was basically like you made like a stained glass. So you take 2 sheets of construction paper and you take a colored piece of cellophane. Do you guys remember doing this? And you cut out like a Christmas ornament or a shape. So for me, it was a tree. And then you put the green cellophane in between the 2 pieces of construction paper. You tape it up, glue it up, bada bing, bada boom. Put it in the window, it looks great. So that's what I suggested because nobody else was coming up with anything. And my teacher said, Amy, I love it. So easy, we can do that. And then everyone, the day that the craft came, was like, this is so much fun. My mom's going to love it. I know where she's going to put it. Okay, same exact voice, tone. Yeah, it happened. Okay, so everyone's excited we make this craft. 2-3 weeks go by. We've come back from Christmas break, and our teacher asks for another volunteer for an art project. And nobody raises their hand, and everyone sits there and they're quiet. And a couple of my friends says, well, what does Amy think? What does Amy want to do? And I was like, well, I'll tell you what I want to do. And I unknowingly became like the class craft queen. Like that's what I started to do. And I loved it. And my teacher recognized this passion inside of me that I loved crafts, which is the spark of my love affair with my glue gun. That's in my bio because it's meaningful to me. So thanks, Maddie, for including that. But that's what started it, truthfully, is way back in 5th grade. I raised my hand. I was brave. I gave an idea and people liked it. And then they wanted to know what else I had to say. And so that history followed me clear up until my 30s, where I am now, where I'm asked all the time to create weird stuff for people. Shoes, costumes, Kindy 500 cars. Like people know they can come to me and I'm happy to do it because my history has proven that I enjoy it and that I'm good at it. And that's not a bad thing. Celebrate your strengths, okay? Sometimes our history follows us, and our expectations follow us. Another thing is success and competition. And this one I think is specific to your age specifically, because you're smart enough to know that if you're not doing it, you're not out there busting butt to work hard, someone else is, right? Someone else is pushing for good grades. Someone else is pushing for the professor to notice them. Someone else is pushing for that internship or that recognition from someone of importance. Okay, success and competition can be a huge motivation. It's not always the best motivation, but it can be a huge motivation to why we do what we do. And if you're like my husband, you have that red type A personality, you're just really competitive. Really competitive. I don't have that gene at all. I'm very yellow and blue. I'm the one over painting in the corner. Like, I don't care what you guys do. I'm just happy to paint. But if you're competitive by nature, this can be a huge motivation for what you do. And recognize that you're just competitive, and that's okay. Another motivation is status and importance. So in 2016, a Journal of Consumer Research, Annette Keenan wrote an article that was called "The Conspicuous Consumption of Time When Busyness and Lack of Leisure Time Become a Status Symbol." So in 2018, we've now adapted this being busy must mean I'm important. And we like to throw that phrase around all the time. I'm just really busy. Yeah, I'm just busy. How's your day going? Oh, I'm so busy. Okay, do you guys hear yourself saying that, or you know people that say it a lot? Okay. Advertisements. We're being told by advertisers how busy we are. Do you know that? It's true. Amazon. Oh, you can't go get toilet paper and toothpaste? Amazon Prime. You're too busy. Let us take care of that for you. Oh, you can't go to the drive-thru and get a hamburger? Uber Eats. We'll do it for you. McDonald's, we got it. Or now my prescription, my pharmacy, actually will now deliver to my house because I'm so busy, I can't go get that rash cream for my son. You need to bring it to me. Okay, so advertisers are catching on to this like, ooh, we're a busy society. Let's make money on that. Let's create things for people, which are good services. I love my Amazon Prime. I do. I love my DoorDash. I do. But they're reinforcing this sense of I'm too busy to do that. And that can be a little scary if you really think about it. How many of you guys have seen WALL-E, the cartoon, Disney cartoon WALL-E? You know, when they're all on the big spaceship in like 500 years and they're all riding around in their little jazzy scooters? Yeah, it's a real fear of mine that we're going to become so complacent and lazy because everything else is going to do it for us. So advertisers are telling us we're too busy. Our everyday is telling us we're too busy. Our social media, our friends, our teachers, we're being told that you're too busy to do certain things. Okay, humble bragging. Think of social media and like, this might resonate more with the ladies in this group, but have you ever had that influencer that you get on your stories and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, I am so busy. And this new makeup palette, like, I know you guys are just dying for me to like create a look for you, but I'm like so busy and I'm working out and I'm like trying to eat okay. And I see all your DMs and you guys are so amazing. You're so awesome. And there's so many of you. I'm trying to get back to all those DMs. Is it striking a chord? You guys know who I'm talking about? And they're like, I love you guys so much. You're like the best followers ever, but I'm just like really busy, okay? Yeah, sorry I had to bring that voice out of the closet, but that's my best influencer voice, okay? But thank you. Because I follow those people too, and they drive me crazy because they're busy, to me, isn't busy, all right? But that brings up my next point, that sometimes busy is a state of mind, and sometimes busy is a subjective and very abstract concept. So I have someone in my life, she shall remain nameless, but you know she's a she. It's always, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Oh, I don't have time for that. I'm so busy. And what that drives home to me is what? You're not important enough for me. Okay, so when we throw that term around, oh, I'm too busy. Yeah, I can't do it. I'm really out of time. It drives this message of I'm too important for you or for your cause. In the 1960s, there was this awesome research study that compared Christmas letters from the 1960s to 2016. And this phrase, crazy schedules, or we're just crazy busy, okay? The differences were almost non-existent in the 1960s to 2016. But we've now glorified this concept of being busy because it shows status and it shows importance. So if I'm busy and I don't have time for you, that must mean that my time is more valuable than yours. Right? Have you ever caught yourself saying that to somebody when you're really not that busy? Just like that cute influencer on Instagram. She might be really busy. I don't know. If she's like a neuroscience major on the side, fine. But for what I see, she's just obsessed with makeup and her DMs, okay? But to her, that might be more than she can handle. Bless her soul. Okay, but when she's talking to a mom of 4 and who I am, like, I don't resonate with that. I don't connect to that. So therefore, I think she's kind of a pill. Okay, but we have to break down this barrier of what one person's busy is might be completely different than our busy. Okay, so busy really is kind of a state of mind. Last motivation we're going to talk about are the feel-goods, and I like the feel-goods. So sometimes it feels good to be busy. Bottom line, it just feels good to be busy. For me, when people ask me, how do you do it all? Why do you do it all? Because I genuinely feel happy when I'm busy. When I'm not, that's when I sink into myself, and I get a little sad and I get a little depressed when I'm not busy. And I have friends, dear friends, that are complete opposites of me. When they are too busy, they get depressed. So it's a fine balance. And what it comes down to, guys, is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself and knowing your capabilities, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses. And if you're feeling joy, great, keep going. If you're starting to feel sad, we're going to talk about some ways that you can help with that. But it feels good to be busy. We have little receptors in our body. Do you guys know what dopamine is? Okay, it's the feel-good chemical. And when we feel needed, we feel wanted, we feel like, ooh, someone trusts me, it releases this little burst of dopamine. And that's a good feeling. We all like to feel wanted and appreciated. And when we put ourselves in leadership, chances are you're going to be needed and you're going to be wanted and you're going to be asked to do something, so it feels good. But on the flip side of that, does anyone know what the stress hormone is called? Cortisol. Okay, and it does the exact opposite. So the next time you get an email chime on your phone or a text message on your phone, I want you to sit and think, which receptor is going off? Which of those chemicals is firing? Is it like, ooh, someone wants me for the right reasons? Or, oh, shoot, I almost swore. Someone wants me for the wrong reasons, and I'm just too stressed, I can't take it on one more second. Okay, so when we're in that balancing act of like, ooh, someone likes me, I like that person, so I'm willing to talk to them. Or, oh man, another email. Yeah, I know I'm failing. Okay, professor, you don't need to tell me again. All right? So sometimes we play this balancing act with our chemical makeup in our body and our hormones, and it's hard to know which is which. So just pay attention to that the next time. And then that cortisol, do you guys know that cortisol actually affects like every working system in your body? Your metabolism, your sleeping, your mood is all kind of hindered on this, hinges on this cortisol and these dopamine reactions in your body. So if you're feeling stressed and you're like, if I hear my chime on my phone one more time, I'm going to chuck it out the window, you're probably taking on too much, okay? You're a little stressed. Your cortisol levels are a little too high. All right, and the last one is we genuinely love and care for people. That's a huge motivation. My mother-in-law is a classic example of this person, and my mom truly, but they take on so much because they genuinely love people. They do. And they want to better their lives, they want to better who they are, but it takes a toll sometimes when you're constantly taking care of other people. Being a mom, oh yeah, I have to love them, and I do love them, but it takes a ton of my time. I want all of you, when you get home, call your mother or your woman figure in your life and just say thanks for having the motivation to love you. Okay, so may I ask this? If you're a leader, a person in position, a person with influence, which each and every one of you in this room are, with heavy responsibilities, or at least days where you feel like you have them, have you ever piled on so much and you felt like you were qualified to do it? You're like, yes, I can do this. Nope, I can do it. I'm fine. I got it. Okay, but if you've ever taken on so much and then wake up one day with the realization that you can't, or that you don't want to, or there's no way you can. You might have all the good intention in the world, but you physically and mentally just cannot do it, then we're going to keep moving forward. If not, you can get up like that guy and leave, okay? I'm just kidding. I don't know who he was. I'm not judging. All right, bottom line. Whatever keeps us important, busy, successful, competitive, involved, engaged, aware, concerned, advancing, responsive, all of these things, whatever keeps us doing that, it will catch up to you. It will. And that's not like a doom and gloom, because we have a solution to it. But when you take it all on, it catches up. One of my favorite, he's a YouTuber, but have you guys ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk? Vaynerchuk, yeah, you guys know who he is. He has this to say, that people are in a rush because we're trying to prove something to somebody. Like, we're all in this competitive, like, busy, got to do it, got to make it happen state of mind sometimes, because we have something to prove. And that's not bad. Maybe we're trying to prove our skill set. We're trying to be that girl in the art class that's like, oh yeah, I got a solution. Not a bad thing, okay? But when we take on too much and it catches up to us, I have a little analogy that I want you guys to think about. Maybe you've heard it, but I heard it years and years ago, and it honestly changed my life. When you're on an airplane and you're going somewhere, and they give you the little safety demonstration, you know, where your exit rows are, when they talk about the oxygen, who puts the oxygen mask on first? You do. And I remember my first flight to Texas, I was 13 years old, and I was watching the stewardess do the little thing, and I'm like, well, that's rude. I'm going to give it to my grandpa sitting next to me. He's going to need the oxygen more than I am. And I remember my grandma saying to me, no, because if you're passed out in the aisle, you're no good to your grandpa. And I was like, light bulb, mind blown moment, okay? And it really drove home this point. So when I later heard this in a leadership conference, it really stuck with me. That if you're passed out in the aisles, guys, you really are no good to anybody else. You've got to give yourself the oxygen first. And sometimes oxygen looks different for different people. For me, it's crafting and shopping. I know that sounds like so superficial, but that's what I find joy in. And if I take my kids with me, great. If I don't, sometimes even better. But that is my oxygen. That's what I need to replenish and renew my sense of who I am and what my purpose is. Something so simple. Online shopping is my friend, and that's okay. We're going to talk about emotional passageways. That's one of my emotional passageways. Okay, you have to recognize when you're going to pass out. You got to recognize it. And then you do things to strategize and make it meaningful and make it worth your time. And we're going to talk about those things next. Who loves that oxygen analogy, right? Such a good visual, such a good visual. All right, but if you don't, and you do what I did a few years ago, and you don't allow yourself that oxygen, something else happens. So I like to call this what goes down when it all catches up. How many of you don't sleep because you're stressed? How many of you feel sadness because you're stressed? You feel a little bit of anger because you're overwhelmed and you're frustrated. You might withdraw. You might have anxiety. This is a big one. Big one. It can make you physically ill. Remember that cortisol and those receptors and those chemicals in your body? When you're not responding to yourself, you can actually physically damage your immune system. And the ever popular, I'm done. I'm just done. I've said this like 8 times this week, maybe 8 times today. But you just say that phrase because I'm done. I can't do it. I'm done. Or we turn to alternative means of coping. And coping looks different on everybody. Some of it's substance, some of it's pornography, some of it's shopping, okay? We find ways to cope with our stress because we get it. We know we're important. We know we've got to rise above this like bottom line, but sometimes we're afraid to do it. But when we take on too much, this literally happens to us. We stop sleeping, we get sad, we get angry, we turn inward, and all of those motivations suddenly don't matter. Like I can love what I'm doing, but if I feel stressed and upset by everyone emailing me and everyone wanting me to solve it, it can turn into a withdrawal situation where you're like, peace out, someone else figure it out, okay? So you have to take time to make yourself a priority. So I mentioned this happened to me a few years ago, exactly 11 years ago, because I was pregnant with my second son, and I was diagnosed with what they call prepartum anxiety. I'd only heard of the postpartum stuff, never the prepartum stuff. I'm like, wait, your mind can like lose it while you're pregnant? Awesome. So I was pregnant with Carter, and I suddenly didn't want to get up in the morning. I suddenly found myself in this dark tunnel where I didn't even know if I like wanted to have another baby. I didn't know if I wanted to be a wife anymore. I had some suicidal thoughts, which is so not like me, so not like me. And I remember feeling like this weight. This is way before like social media was like a big thing. But I would go to my email, my inbox, and it would be full of people needing me. And I'm like, wait, I can't even take care of myself. How am I going to take care of all those other people that are depending on me? And I remember sitting very vividly at the edge of my bed thinking, I'm done. I can't do this. And I don't want to do this. And this feeling of anxiety and depression and anger, it swallowed me whole, you guys. Swallowed me up. And the only thing that saved me was my then 2-year-old son, who's 13 now, came in and he's like, Mommy, I need you. I'm like, okay. So I found something in that phrase that got me up. And what he really needed was goldfish crackers, but that's fine. It got me off my little low point sitting on my bed. Okay, so I found something that wasn't even me at that moment. It was somebody else, and that got me out of it. And then my husband came home and he gave me a big hug and he's like, "You're doing awesome. I just want you to know that you're doing awesome." And it kept me motivated to keep going. So I need you to find what that oxygen looks like for you. If it's somebody in your life or it's something in your life that's good for your soul, hang on to it, okay? Hang on to that. All right, where are we at now, guys? I didn't want to miss anything, so I brought a little cheat sheet. So when people ask, is there really like a harm in being busy? I can personally say yes, because I was so busy and felt so overwhelmed as that young mom that I really did feel consumed by it. I didn't want to do it anymore, and I felt sick inside. So when we look at the physical repercussions of being busy, I want you guys to think about this, if any of them have ever affected you or someone close to you in your life. Are we truly making ourselves ill because we're taking on too much? So there are really over 200 classified mental illnesses, probably even more than that. But the 5 categories that they basically boil down to is you have anxiety disorders, mood disorders, psychotic disorders, dementias, and eating disorders. Those are like the basic 5, okay, if you're going to talk about mental illness. And then our good friend WebMD provided this for us because I wanted you to have a resource. I wanted you to be able to go to WebMD and you can type in exhaustion, stress-related, and there's tons of articles, which I felt was pretty awesome to have these resources at our fingertips. But these are just some of the main points, and there were several, but cardiovascular disease, including heart disease, high blood pressure, abnormal heart rhythms, heart attacks, and strokes, obesity, other eating disorders, menstrual problems, sexual dysfunction, skin and hair problems, like literally you're so stressed that your hair falls out. You guys have heard that, like I'm gonna pull my hair out? That's a stress disorder called trichotillomania. I know 2 people that have it, that they literally get so stressed they pull their hair out. Eyelashes, arm hairs. And it's so sad. They're so stressed. Acne, I'm not going to say that word, psoriasis, yep, Thank you. Eczema and permanent hair loss, gastrointestinal problems such as GERD, gastritis, ulcerative colitis, and irritable colon. My little brother, prime example. He's an entrepreneur, started a company that he didn't expect to go anywhere. Now it's worth a few $1 million. He is the GERD guy. His stomach is literally like eating itself because he's so stressed. And he has major intestinal issues, which never really existed before he got into this high-stress life. And it's awful to watch. I hate it so much. Like, there's not enough Tums in the world that can cure an overbusy schedule. Okay, so you've got to learn to take that oxygen however you can find it. So real things. Raise of hands. Does anyone know anyone, or maybe it's happened to you, where one of these has happened? Maybe it's just a season in your life, but you felt one of these or seen someone go through it, okay? So it's true. We can actually make ourselves sick when we're too stressed or we're too overwhelmed. All right, so we've talked about some heavy things. Now I want to talk about happy things. You guys ready for the happy part? Okay, I'm going to smile a lot more if I haven't already been. All right, so emotional passageways. And I wrote this. If you guys want to take a picture, you can quote me on Facebook later. But this is me. You need to allow yourself permission to feel. You have to stop yourself from shutting down and be strong enough to say no to experiences that don't enrich your life and no to the people who don't enhance your experience. Pretty deep, huh? Yeah, you guys can laugh at that. Okay. This is truly what I think my mantra, my mission, my whole hope for today is that you guys recognize that it's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel like I can't do this. It's okay to feel I don't want to do this. All of those things, I am giving you permission to feel because they're passageways. One of my favorite quotes, in fact, I thought it was just like the heavens giving me a little boost for today because a friend of mine posted it on his Facebook page today. And it's an anonymous writer, but it says, "Grief never ends, but it changes. It's a passage, not a place to stay. Grief is not a sign of weakness, nor a lack of faith. It is the price of love." Now, I want you to take the word grief, and we're going to replace it with something else. Overwhelmed, frustrated. Okay, if I replace it with frustration, frustration never ends, but it changes. It's a passage, it's not a place to stay. Frustration is not a sign of weakness, nor a lack of faith. Frustration is the price of love. Being busy, being overwhelmed, feeling like I just don't want to do this anymore. Those are okay feelings, they are, but they're not places to stay. Allow yourself to feel them. Allow yourself to know that I need some oxygen or I'm going to shut down, and then choose to say no. You all have my permission to say no. If it ever gets you in trouble, I'll give you my email and you can tell me all about it. But I give you permission to say no to things that are going to affect you and shut you down. Know your limitations and know when you have just had enough. And I give you permission to do that, okay? If someone asks you, how are you doing? I want you to answer this question, and I want some discussion too. If you say, oh, I'm just really busy, or you say, I'm really overwhelmed, what are the differences there in those two questions or two statements? I'm really busy, or I'm really overwhelmed. What's the difference? Some brave soul. I should have brought treats and handed them out. Who wants to say? Yeah.
I think that the overwhelmed is kind of like accepting it and then being willing to reach out for help.
Okay.
And being busy is kind of like, I don't really have time and I don't really want your help either way.
Mm-hmm. Goes back to that status of busy equals important. Okay. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Humility.
Okay.
If you can say I'm overwhelmed, you're admitting that it might not be enough.
Okay. In the back.
I think
Thank you.
admitting your vulnerability is something that we don't tend to do. And I think overwhelmed kind of, it opens yourself up for conversation, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're admitting that you're opening the space up to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas busy, I feel like is a defense mechanism. Oh, I'm busy. That's,
Right?
you know.
Yeah.
Busy all the time. Busy.
Yep. Even though those words basically mean the same thing, they're, a synonym of each other. I love that. Thank you. I'm not the only one that does voices. They're basically the same thing, but one is more soul related, right? Like overwhelmed. I think of like running through mud. Like you're doing your best. You're trying so hard, but it just doesn't feel like enough. And you feel swallowed up, consumed, overwhelmed. And busy, I always think of like the big hand, like, I'm busy. I don't have time. I was in the grocery store recently, and the girl that was checking my groceries, checking me out, I always hate to say that, she wasn't. But I'm like, how are you doing today? I've made that also a personal thing. I'm never going to wait for the grocery store person to ask me how I'm doing. I always beat them to it. It's changed my shopping experience. But I asked her, I'm like, how are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm just busy, just busy, running through my frozen peas there. I'm like, oh yeah, what's busy? And she's like, oh, and she keeps checking your stuff through. And maybe she just didn't want to talk to me, and that's fine. But she couldn't tell me what was going on. Like, why are you busy? I like to know people's stories. I like to know what makes them tick. And she's like, well, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm good. Feel a little overwhelmed sometimes. She's like, really? How are you overwhelmed? And then I just spilled like all of my mom barf on her. I'm like, well, I have 4 kids and I need to volunteer at the Halloween party and I need to make cupcakes for this thing and I have to church, okay? And she was like, okay, like here's your total, get out of my line, all right? But when you open yourself up, it's amazing what stories you can gain or what you can glean from someone else's experiences. And I love listening to it. I truly, truly do. But thank you for answering that. So when we say we're busy, we do. We send that message like, you're not important enough for me. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for you. But overwhelm invites a little bit of feeling and emotion because we know how sucky it feels to feel overwhelmed, right? We do. Everyone in this room knows how that feels. Another thing I want to talk about is when someone says to you, well, how do you do it all? Have you guys ever been asked that question? Am I the only one? Okay. Or they say like, how do you have time for that? And they kind of do it with this like incriminating like look or tone in their voice. Prime example, this Halloween, so I have 4 kids under the age of 13. My 13-year-old's like too cool for school. He wanted to be a morph suit, whatever that is, for Halloween. But my 11-year-old wanted to be a hippie. And my 7-year-old wanted to be the Black Raven King. I guess it's a Fortnite skin. I don't know, I'm still learning. And then my 3-year-old wanted to be a mermaid princess. So have you ever tried to look up a Black Raven King on Google? Let me tell you what comes up. Nothing, okay? So I had to make his dreams come true. I mean, I'm his mother, right? So I'm like, challenge accepted, baby. Let's go to the Joann's, okay? So we draw it all out. This is me and my little artistic glue gun brain. And we made the coolest costumes. I wish I had put a picture in there, but I have them on my phone if you want to look after. But I know that my time with them is short. And I know that my time with them is precious. And before I know it, they're going to all want to be morph suits for Halloween. And I don't want that. Okay? So I took the time, I invested in my children, and I made the coolest Halloween costumes for them. And when someone at the school Halloween parade was like, how do you find time to do that? Like, right? Kind of like knocked me off my little happy high horse for a second. And then I was like, wait a second, Amy, you are smarter than that. And you tell her exactly how you did it. And I said, you know what? I make time. I make time. And I didn't say it like, I'm better than you because you bought your kid's costume from Target. I just was like, I make the time. I do. I pencil me in. In fact, I don't pencil myself in. I use Sharpie marker, or I put it in my phone where it ain't going anywhere. I make time for myself, and I make time for my kids because those things are important. And I make time for date night. Heck yes, I love like Outback Steakhouse. You know, I make time for that because it's meaningful and it matters to me. And I don't care what that looks like for you guys. I mean, I do care. Don't get me wrong. I care deeply. But I want you to start thinking of ways to make time for yourself. And when someone asks you, how do you do it all? I want you to respond, I make time for myself. You bet. And I make time for the things that I love and the things that bring me joy. And if I don't have time for the other things, I'm not saying my laundry room looked great or that we ate Wendy's for a straight week while I was making all those awesome costumes, but I managed to do it. And it was okay. We all lived. All right? So next thing I want you to do, this is where the fun stuff comes. I want you, I know a lot of you have paper, pens, computers, phones. I want you to just take like a couple of minutes, go on a little vision quest, and I want you to create your perfect day. I want you to create your perfect day. And I want you to think about like what you're wearing. Because it's your perfect day. So if you're rocking something like you'd wear to the Grammys, girl, boy, put it on, okay? I want you to picture the car that you're driving in, where you're going. If Zac Efron's sitting next to you eating ice cream, fine. It's your perfect day. Or I don't know any like hot girls I can say for the guys. Someone shout one out. Jessica Rabbit. I don't know. You guys even remember her? Okay. There we go. But I want some details of your perfect day. What does your hair look like? What cologne are you sporting? What shoes do you have on? Like, this is your perfect day. And then once you've got all that covered, tell me what you're doing, where you're going. Are you hopping a flight to Paris? And you're going to get there in 2 minutes because it's your perfect day. Are you eating like an exorbitant amount of Burger King? Because calories don't count. It's your perfect day. Okay? Or maybe your perfect day looks like sitting by the pool eating nachos from the gas station. That's fine too. Perfect day. For me, it would be just sitting in my house by myself. My husband thinks that's so weird. I'm like, nope. I love my house. I like my bed. I don't want to go to a hotel. I just want to be in my house by myself, watching all the fixer-upper I want. Okay? Yeah. All right, any volunteers that want to share what their perfect day looks like? I really should have brought like leftover Halloween candy and thrown it out for volunteers. Come on, someone's got to be brave. Thank you.
My perfect day, I'd be wearing like sandals and socks, which I do a lot anyway.
Love it, yeah.
Oh, well, and then I'm going to go hike the Alps, so I'll change into tennis shoes.
Okay, good.
And then I'm going to like take a nap in a hammock, and then like see some wildlife, and then maybe like hang out with friends later. And,
Perfect.
yeah.
I love it. Very good. One more? Who wants to share? Yes, a man.
I'd go to a Cowboys game with Carrie Underwood and go shoot some crap.
Love it. Love it. The specifics there. Carrie Underwood, she's your perfect girl. I love it. Okay, so here's our plan, guys. How many of you have felt that overwhelming, that like, ugh, I don't want to do this, I can't do this? Here's where you're going to come back. You're going to find that perfect day. This is like a true psychological exercise. I promise it works. But this is our plan. Now we have solutions, and here's a whole list of them, but it starts with that perfect day, and here's why. So now you get to integrate that perfect day. So on the contrast, if you think of your worst day, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's the end of the semester, maybe it's going back home. That's maybe your worst day. I don't know. I want you to think of the days where you feel overwhelmed, you feel weighed down, you feel busy, you feel like you can't do it, you don't want to do it, you physically can't do it. We have a solution. Because you're going to take that awesome perfect day and you're going to find a way to plug something from that perfect day into the worst days. So Carrie Underwood, man, I wish I could hook you up with her. But you can listen to her, right? You can follow her on Instagram and like as many posts as you want. You can cyberstalk. It's okay. That's as close as you're going to get to Carrie. Do it. Okay? So we're going to integrate part of that perfect day into something that brings us down a little bit. And if we can't hike the Alps in our tennis shoes, maybe finding a background that we can put on our phone. Something that's a perfect vision of our perfect day, integrate it into your busyness, okay? So for me, I said I like online shopping. I really do. I love my kids. So as maybe some of you saw, my laptop screen is my kids. They bring me happiness, they bring me joy, and they bring me a sense of balance. Like I know if I'm having a bad day and I feel overwhelmed, all I have to do is break out Legos and Barbies, and I'm like, my inner 4-year-old rejoices, okay? And then I'm better able and more qualified and willing to tackle all the junk I have to do because I've given myself that oxygen mask. I've given myself a break. I know I'm not perfect. I know I don't want to do all those crappy things, but I have managed to find something that makes me happy. My perfect day, all right? Another thing we're going to do, this one I think is my number one because it's helped me so many times throughout my life. How many of you do daily planning? Like where you sit down maybe each night or once a week and you do a weekly or daily plan, okay? Not quite half of you. If you don't already do it, I would highly encourage you to learn how to daily and weekly plan. Especially when you're busy, you're in college, you're all of those things that we talked about earlier. If you can take 5 minutes to plan your next day, man, it helps me sleep better. Totally helps me sleep better. But we're gonna start making lists. So my A list, my B list, my C list, my D list. And you might be thinking, what is she talking about? I'm gonna tell you. But your A list are the things and people that bring you joy. And this has no stipulation on responsibility. These are simply the people and the things that bring you joy. So if online shopping, playing Barbies, watching Fixer Upper, those are things that bring me joy, helping girls have college tuition, that brings me joy, those immediately go on my A list. And then my B list are the things I have to do, like all of these things, okay? We have to provide, we have to do groceries, we have to like be nice to our roommate, okay? Like those are things that are on our B list. If we don't love them, we can act like it. And then your C list are the things that maybe don't bring you as much joy, but you still have to do them. Writing that term paper or turning in some assignment that you forgot about, okay? So you start to prioritize your life, which helps you prioritize your feelings. Because if you know that list A brings you so much joy, you're gonna find a way to integrate list A, aren't you? And that perfect day, you're gonna find ways to do that. But if you're not consciously thinking about it and you're not planning on it being part of your day, it won't happen. Or it'll happen in small amounts that aren't enough. It's quantity over quality sometimes. You need that time. You need those hours put in of things that bring you happiness and joy. Your D list are bottom line, the people you don't like, things you don't like to do, but they're still part of your life. And I love this concept, and I do it all the time, all the time. I quantify and put people on my lists. And then I'm like, all right, I know I got to do a little bit of B, a little bit of C, but I love my list A. And then I always come back to list A. Change your current state. Did you guys know that if you're in like a classroom or you're in a study place where you just don't want to be, when you remove yourself from it, it's cognitive dissonance. Like it shuts your brain down, it allows it to break, breathe, and then you can go do something someplace else. So if you still have to study, but you literally cannot sit in your apartment for 5 more minutes, great, go outside. If it's cold, come to campus. Whatever you have to do, changing your state can really change your state. It fixes things a lot of the time. Journaling. I used to be really, really good at journaling, and I've kind of lost sense of that as I've, had to raise 4 human beings and my husband, so 5. But journaling is actually really therapeutic. Really therapeutic. Before I came today, I might not be a day-to-day journaler, but I sat and I wrote down some of the things that I wanted to articulate to you today. I wanted some feelings to get across, and so I journaled them and I thought about it. One of them was to get you to laugh, to get you to think, and to observe and find ways that you can make your life not so busy and exhausting. Delegate. I'm terrible at that one because I know I can do it better than anybody, right? But you have to learn to delegate. You have to. It's part of oxygen. You got to learn to delegate. Set yourself boundaries. I think this one's super, super hard for a lot of us because we want to be meaningful to a lot of people. We want to say yes to everything, maybe. But when you set yourself boundaries, like, nope, I cannot make 87 cupcakes for the church social. I just can't. That's a good boundary, okay? Costco has lots of cupcakes. That's okay if you say no to making something or doing something. If you set yourself a boundary, I'm just done. I can't take on any more. Establish better bedtime routines. How many of you struggle sleeping? Okay. I remember reading a study years ago that the average college student only receives like 4 hours of sleep. I'm like, oh, heck no. My professors would be asking me to drop their class because I'm not a nice person when I don't sleep. So establishing a better bedtime routine. And what that looks like is you get off your phone or your computer 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. Your brain is firing a million miles an hour when you have a screen in front of you. And if you expect to like look at Instagram and troll social media or read ESPN or whatever my husband does too, if you're expecting to do that right before you close your eyes and expect your brain to just be like, okay, not gonna happen very often. If you're truly exhausted and you're truly tired, sure. But for the vast majority of us, we need a break from that screen 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, just to allow ourselves to stop thinking so much or being inundated with images. Another thing you can do here is do your daily planning. So think and prioritize tomorrow. Okay, my A-list tomorrow, I get to speak at UVU to some really awesome college kids. That makes me happy. Doesn't stress me out, makes me really happy, and I'm excited to do it. Oh yeah, I'm watching my neighbor's daughter. Great, I love my neighbor, okay? I'm making my list, I'm prioritizing it in a way that is functional for me, I can process it, and I know when and how I'm gonna get through the muddy parts of the next day, okay? If it's going to Chick-fil-A, do it. That can be your A-list, you bet. If you're like planning, I'm gonna do lunch, I'm gonna pick up a girlfriend, I'm gonna go grab a Sodalicious, whatever it takes. I'm like telling you guys my daily life. Sodalicious, Chick-fil-A, pretty much all the time. Okay, daily, weekly, monthly planning, I think we've talked about that enough. This right there will change the overwhelmed, it will. If you can prioritize and just plan a little bit, it really does set your brain up for success. The last thing, a person being too busy is a myth. Do you guys know that? It's a myth. People make time for the things that are really important to them, and that's Mandy Hill. I don't know her, but I love her because she's identified that we run around and we tell people, oh, I'm so busy, I'm sorry, I'm so busy. That's a myth. You're never too busy for your A-list, people. You're never too busy for your A-list priorities and the things that you really want to accomplish on this planet. You're never too busy for those things. Now, when you start getting to B and to C and to D, my hope is that you just start taking on less of those things. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that we don't live in like puppy land with rainbows and sparkles everywhere. Our lives are not made up of list A. I get that. But if you can incorporate more of what brings you joy and find ways, make your background something you love. Stop unfollowing the people that are toxic. Quit allowing yourself to have relationships with people that are draining. You become less and less absorbed with your B list, your C list, your D list. I like to think of those people as toxic suckers. When I talk to youth groups, this is what I do. I have this visual aid that I use where I get chocolate milk, and I have a thing of milk, and we put chocolate syrup on it, which is the breathers, the people in your life that are awesome. They make you feel qualified. They make you feel happy. They make you feel safe. You want to be a breather, and not only to yourself, but to everyone around you. And then we always put some toxic Windex in there, and we ask the kids, do you want to drink that? And of course they say no. It's really Gatorade. But it shows them the point that when you allow toxic people into your system, you don't want to be a part of it. It's not good. You don't feel like yourself when you allow toxic people in. So if you have toxic people in your life and you've got a lot of your D-list people affecting you, treat them like a splinter, truly. And splinters are sometimes hard to see, hard to identify, and hard to get out. They're hard to remove. But if you can find that little like pair of life tweezers somewhere, maybe it's in the back of your medicine cabinet covered in, dust and toothpaste, whatever, bring them out, clean them off, and seriously pluck those people out of your life. And once you pull them out, they're gone. That's what happens to a sliver, right? It no longer causes you pain and anguish. Might cause you a little infection, but you can take an antibiotic. Okay, but sometimes people act like a sliver. And when you get brave enough and strong enough to just pull them out, they're gone. So think about that. Not only are the experiences and the things that you're doing affect you, but the people around you can affect you too. Okay, and I've talked way too much, and I apologize. But last thing, I asked you at the beginning if you've ever felt lost. If you've ever felt like you've lost a sense of who you are because you're a leader and you're making change on this planet, and that's great. But it can be really exhausting sometimes, can't it? And it can be draining, it can be hard. Allow yourself to feel those emotions, but don't stay there. Remember, they're just passageways to something else. Feel all the feels. Get them in and get them out. Tackle the problem at hand, but do it with a lot of oxygen, a lot of the A-list, And then this is my last thing, and I put it up here because I love it. Finding yourself is really not how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in the last of your winter coat pocket, okay? You are also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, an unlearning, an excavation, a remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. I love that, and that struck a chord with me, because sometimes we do feel lost in this leadership that we have to take on. We feel lost, like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Have you guys ever asked yourself that question? You really have never been lost. You just have to get back to the root, and the root is you. The root is finding what brings you joy, being smart enough to recognize what doesn't, and just doing more of the things on your A list. Prioritizing your happiness does not mean you're selfish. It means you're a fighter, and you're willing to survive, and you're willing to give yourself that oxygen so that you can be all of those awesome things to so many people. That's why you're in leadership. That's why you're here today, because you have a desire to make yourself better. And that's all anyone can ask of you, and that's all you should ask of yourself. Don't take it on and feel like you're suffocated and you can't breathe, because that's not a manageable list of life. It's not. No one can survive under those conditions for too long. So I hope you guys can take something today, one thing, maybe two. If you loved the whole thing, even better. But take on something that is meaningful to you and find ways to give yourself that oxygen and become the best leaders on this campus and the best leaders that the world needs you to be. And I know you'll do great things. And I hope at some point our paths cross again and then we can see each other's greatness, because that's what it's really about, okay? Thank you guys so much for coming. You've been a great audience. Thank you.